May 4, 1943. North Atlantic, approximately 300 miles southwest of Iceland. Captain Lieutenant Klaus Bargsten stood in the control room of U-521, listening to the escorts circling overhead. The hydrophone operator, his face pale in the red emergency lighting, tracked the propeller signatures with methodical precision. 2 destroyers, possibly 3. Range closing. Through 16 previous depth-charge attacks across 4 patrols, Bargsten had learned to read the rhythm of anti-submarine warfare like a conductor reading a musical score. The escorts would make their approach runs, the crew would brace for impact, and the charges would detonate at predetermined depths, creating massive pressure waves that shook the boat but rarely achieved direct hits. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The survival formula was well established by 1943. Dive deep, rig for silent running, alter course between attacks, and wait for the escorts to exhaust their depth charge supply. A Type 7C U-boat like U-521 could reach crush depth at approximately 280 meters, though most commanders stopped at 200 meters to maintain structural safety margins. Standard British depth charges, set for detonation between 50 and 150 meters, could damage a boat within 20 meters of the blast radius, but the ocean was vast and submarines were small. Statistical analysis, conducted by Befehlshaber der Unterseeboot headquarters, estimated that fewer than 2% of depth charge attacks resulted in U-boat destruction. The odds favoured survival through evasion and endurance. Then Bargsten heard something different, not the rushing sound of depth charges tumbling from stern racks, but a rapid series of splashes in quick succession. 20, perhaps 24, distinct impacts in a tight pattern, directly above the boat's position. The hydrophone operator's expression changed from concentration to confusion. Herr Kaleun. Multiple small projectiles entering water. Pattern suggests forward-firing weapons, not conventional depth charges. Before Bargsten could process this information, before he could order evasive maneuvers or depth changes, the first detonation occurred. Not the distant thunder of preset depth charges exploding at fixed depths regardless of target proximity, but a catastrophic contact explosion against U-521's pressure hull approximately 10 meters aft of the control room. The boat lurched violently. Lighting failed throughout the aft compartments. The engineering officer's damage report came in fragments through the chaos of secondary explosions and flooding. Pressure hull breached between frames 60 and 70. Main ballast tank 3 ruptured. Rapid flooding in engine room. Watertight doors holding but pressure differential extreme. U-521 sank stern first to crush depth in 90 seconds. 46 men died. None understood what had killed them. The weapon system that destroyed U-521 represented a revolution in anti-submarine warfare as significant as radar or sonar, yet it received far less attention in historical accounts. The Hedgehog forward-throwing anti-submarine mortar system, developed by the British Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development and deployed operationally from 1942 onward, transformed submarine hunting from a game of probability into a killing science. The mathematics were brutally simple. 24 projectiles fired in a circular pattern 40 meters in diameter, detonating only on contact with a submarine's hull. If the attacking ship's sonar held accurate target position, if the firing solution was correctly calculated, if the submarine remained within the impact zone for the 11 seconds between launch and water entry, the probability of at least one direct hit approached 70% under ideal conditions. For U-boat commanders accustomed to surviving depth charge attacks through skill and luck, the Hedgehog represented a psychological revolution as profound as the technological one. Every previous anti-submarine weapon had provided feedback regardless of accuracy. Depth charges exploded at preset depths whether they hit anything or not, creating massive disturbances that obscured sonar returns and forced escorts to regain contact before conducting follow-up attacks. This gave U-boats time to maneuver, change depth, and evade. But Hedgehog projectiles armed themselves only after water entry, and detonated only upon direct contact with a solid object. Silence meant the attack had missed. The escorts maintained perfect sonar contact throughout the attack and could immediately fire again. Explosion meant direct hit, almost certainly fatal. There was no middle ground, no near miss creating temporary confusion, no wasted time re-establishing contact. The weapon system eliminated the tactical breathing space that had kept U-boat casualties manageable through the first years of the Atlantic War. The development history of Hedgehog began in the most unlikely circumstances. In 1940, as the Battle of Britain raged overhead, Lieutenant Commander Charles Goodev of the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve was assigned to the Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development, an organization whose deliberately vague name concealed its mission of developing unconventional weapons for the Royal Navy. Goodev, a Canadian-born scientist who had taught physical chemistry at University College London before the war, approached anti-submarine warfare with fresh perspective, unconstrained by naval orthodoxy. Traditional depth-charge tactics required the attacking ship to pass directly over the submarine's estimated position before dropping charges. This meant losing sonar contact during the final approach, as the sonar transducer, mounted in the ship's bow, could not maintain target lock when the target passed beneath the ship. Escorts essentially attacked blind during the critical final seconds, relying on dead reckoning to estimate target position. This fundamental limitation explained why so many depth-charge attacks failed despite accurate initial sonar contacts. Goodev's innovation was conceptually straightforward, but technically challenging. If weapons could be thrown forward of the attacking ship while maintaining sonar contact throughout the attack, accuracy would improve dramatically. The technical challenges centered on creating projectiles that could be launched forward without destroying the firing ship, could survive water impact without damage, could sink quickly to reach submarines attempting to dive deeper, and could detonate reliably on contact while remaining safe to handle aboard ship. The solution emerged through collaboration between Goodev's team and technical specialists from the explosives industry. The Hedgehog projectile, designated Mark 10, weighed 65 pounds, measured approximately 2 feet in length, and contained 35 pounds of Torpex explosive, a composition significantly more powerful than TNT. The projectile's stabilized fins ensured nose-first water entry. A mechanical impact fuse armed after the projectile sank 6 meters, providing safety margin against premature detonation from waves or debris. The fuse's striker mechanism required direct impact force to function, making the weapon safe to handle and resistant to sympathetic detonation if nearby projectiles exploded. The launcher system, designated Hedgehog Mark 1, consisted of 24 spigot mortars, arranged in 4 rows of 6 launchers each, mounted on the foredeck of escort vessels. Each spigot mortar was essentially a steel rod or spigot onto which the projectile was loaded. A cordite charge at the spigot's base provided propulsion. When fired in rapid salvo, the 24 projectiles arced, forward and upward, reaching maximum altitude of approximately 80 feet before descending in an elliptical pattern. The launcher could be adjusted for range by varying the elevation angle, with typical engagement ranges between 250 and 300 yards ahead of the firing ship. At this range, the sonar operator maintained contact throughout the attack, observing the target's movements and providing corrections for follow-up salvos if the initial attack missed. The first operational Hedgehog installation occurred on HMS Westcott, a W-class destroyer converted to escort duties, in January 1942. Initial trials revealed teething problems common to revolutionary weapons. The cordite charges occasionally failed to ignite, leaving live projectiles on the spigot. The projectiles sometimes tumbled during flight, entering the water at incorrect angles and failing to arm properly. The impact fuses proved sensitive to shock during firing, occasionally causing premature detonation. Through methodical testing and refinement during early 1942, British weapons specialists resolved these issues sufficiently for wider deployment. By mid-1942, Hedgehog systems were being installed on convoy escorts throughout the Atlantic, though production constraints limited initial deployment. The weapon's true potential would not be realized until 1943, when manufacturing capacity expanded and escort commanders accumulated operational experience with the new weapon system. The first confirmed U-boat kill attributed to Hedgehog occurred on February 23, 1943, when HMS Vanoc, a V-class destroyer operating as part of the escort group protecting convoy on 166, detected U-606 attempting to approach the convoy from astern. Korvettenkapitan Hans Dohler, commanding U-606, had departed Brest, France, on January 27, 1943, for his boat's 9th war patrol. Dohler was an experienced commander with multiple successful patrols, holder of the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, and thoroughly familiar with British depth-charge tactics. His boat carried the latest German technology, including the Metox radar detector and enhanced anti-aircraft armament. None of this prepared him for what was about to occur. HMS Vanoc's sonar operator detected U-606 at approximately 1,700 yards range, approaching the convoy at periscope depth. Lieutenant Commander Raymond Hart, Vanoc's commanding officer, immediately altered course to intercept, increasing speed to 20 knots. Standard procedure would have involved closing to approximately 200 yards before executing a depth charge attack, losing sonar contact during the final approach. Instead, Hart maintained sonar contact while his Hedgehog crew prepared for action. At 400 yards range, with perfect sonar return indicating U-606's exact position and depth, Hart ordered fire. 24 projectiles arced forward through the afternoon sky. The entire salvo entered the water in a pattern approximately 100 feet ahead of Vanoc's bow, creating a circular impact zone 40 meters in diameter, centered on U-606's calculated position. The sonar operator maintained contact throughout, watching the target's echo on his display. 11 seconds after launch, the first explosion occurred, then another, then a third. 3 direct hits in quick succession, far more than required to destroy a Type 7C U-boat. U-606 imploded at approximately 80 meters depth. There were no survivors from the crew of 47. Hart's after-action report, filed February 24, 1943, contained a passage that captured the psychological transformation Hedgehog enabled among escort commanders. The attack differed fundamentally from conventional depth-charge operations. We maintained sonar contact throughout the engagement, observing the target's attempts at evasion. The explosions confirmed direct hits with certainty, eliminating doubt about attack effectiveness. No secondary depth-charge attack was required. The submarine was destroyed by initial salvo. This weapon system transforms anti-submarine warfare from estimation and hope to precision and certainty. The operational statistics validated Hart's assessment. In 1942, before widespread Hedgehog deployment, the average number of depth-charge attacks required to destroy a U-boat exceeded 25 attacks per confirmed kill. Some boats survived hundreds of depth charges across multiple encounters. The exchange ratio favored submarines despite Allied numerical superiority in escort vessels. By late 1943, after Hedgehog achieved wide deployment, the kill ratio for escorts equipped with the weapon improved to approximately 1 U-boat destroyed for every 5 to 7 attacks, where at least 1 projectile achieved direct hit. The improvement seemed modest until analyzing the broader implications. Hedgehog attacks that missed produced no explosions, allowing escorts to immediately fire again without waiting to regain sonar contact. Successful attacks produced immediate, definitive results, freeing escorts to prosecute other targets or rejoin convoy protection duties. The time required to destroy a U-boat dropped from hours to minutes. For U-boat commanders, the tactical implications were catastrophic. Standard evasion procedures developed against depth charges became worthless against Hedgehog. Diving deeper provided no protection, as the contact fuses detonated at any depth. Radical course changes during the attack offered minimal advantage, as the 11-second flight time from launch to impact meant the boat could travel at most 40 to 50 meters at maximum submerged speed, while the impact pattern covered 40 meters diameter with some overlap. The only effective defense was avoiding detection entirely. But by 1943 Allied, radar and sonar capabilities made this increasingly difficult. The German Naval Intelligence Service, Beobachtungsdienst, began collecting reports of Hedgehog attacks during spring 1943. Survivors from boats that escaped Hedgehog attacks and intelligence gleaned from British equipment recovered from sunken escorts or captured installations gradually revealed the weapon's characteristics to German analysts. The intelligence assessment, circulated to U-boat headquarters in May 1943, concluded with stark honesty. The forward-throwing weapon designated Hedgehog by British forces represents a significant advance in anti-submarine warfare effectiveness. The weapon eliminates the sonar blind spot during attack, provides definitive confirmation of hit or miss through contact detonation only, and creates an impact pattern sufficiently large to overcome evasive maneuvers during the brief flight time. Tactical countermeasures beyond avoiding detection are limited. Boats detecting forward-throwing weapon attacks should execute maximum rate diving to reach depth below the probable impact zone before projectiles reach their position, but the time available, approximately 10 to 12 seconds from projectile launch to water impact, provides insufficient opportunity for significant depth change from periscope depth to safe depth below 100 meters. The psychological impact on U-boat crews exceeded the weapon's tactical effectiveness. Depth charge attacks, however terrifying, followed predictable patterns. The charges would detonate, the boat would shudder, damage would be assessed, repairs would be attempted, and the ordeal would either end with the submarine's destruction or the escort's departure. There was structure to the chaos, rhythm to the terror. Experienced commanders could estimate their chances, calculate probabilities, make rational decisions about when to evade and when to maintain position. Hedgehog eliminated this psychological framework. The silence between launch and impact, those 11 eternal seconds, contained no information. Had the firing solution been accurate, would the projectiles land close enough for damage even without direct hit? Should the commander order emergency dive, potentially placing the boat deeper into the impact zone, or maintain depth and hope the pattern missed? The contact detonation principle meant the crew's first indication of attack success or failure would be either the catastrophic pressure pulse of direct hull impact or the blessed silence of complete miss with no near miss, pressure waves or minor damage to provide feedback. Korvettenkapitan Peter Kremer, commanding U-333, survived a Hedgehog attack in June 1943 that captured this psychological dimension. His boat was transiting the Bay of Biscay submerged at periscope depth when British sonar detected his position. Kremer heard the distinct rapid splashing pattern that German intelligence had identified as characteristic of forward-throwing weapons. He ordered emergency dive to 200 meters, the deepest his boat could safely reach. The hydrophone operator counted 11 seconds from the last splash to the first explosion. 3 projectiles detonated in rapid succession, approximately 30 meters from U-333's position, close enough to shake the boat violently, but not close enough for hull penetration. In his post-war memoir, published as U-Boat Commander in English translation, Kremer described the experience. Those 11 seconds contained eternity. We knew explosive projectiles were falling toward us. We knew our depth was increasing, but nowhere near fast enough to avoid the impact zone. We knew that if the British sonar operator's solution was accurate, we would die without warning, without possibility of survival. The explosion, when it came, brought relief even though it caused significant damage. We had lost the lottery this time, but we had survived to play again. Boats that heard the splashes and then experienced direct hits never knew what killed them. That uncertainty, that absolute lack of control during those 11 seconds of falling projectiles, destroyed morale more effectively than the weapons themselves. The production and deployment statistics for Hedgehog revealed Allied industrial capacity applied to a proven tactical solution. By the end of 1943, approximately 300 Allied escort vessels mounted Hedgehog systems, including British, Canadian, and American ships. Monthly production of projectiles reached tens of thousands, with manufacturing facilities in Britain, Canada, and the United States all contributing to supply. The United States Navy adopted Hedgehog enthusiastically, installing the system on destroyer escorts, patrol craft, and Coast Guard cutters assigned to Atlantic convoy duties. American forces typically designated the weapon as Projector Mark 10 and made minor modifications to the launcher design for improved reliability and ease of maintenance. The fundamental operating principle remained unchanged. 24 projectiles, 40-meter impact pattern, contact detonation only, 11 seconds from launch to impact. German attempts to develop countermeasures followed familiar patterns of too little, too late. Experimental programs explored various approaches. Acoustic decoys designed to confuse Allied sonar were tested but proved ineffective against experienced operators who could distinguish between submarine returns and artificial targets. Rubber coating to reduce sonar reflection showed some promise in reducing detection range, but could not eliminate detection entirely, and added significant weight while reducing submerged speed. Schnorkel systems, allowing submerged diesel operation, reduced the need to surface, but provided no defense against sonar detection while at periscope depth. The most promising German development, the Type 21 electroboot with enhanced underwater performance and radical hull design, might have provided sufficient speed to evade Hedgehog impact zones, but these boats entered service only in the war's final weeks, far too late to affect the Atlantic campaign's outcome. The operational impact of Hedgehog extended beyond its direct kill statistics. Escorts, equipped with forward-throwing weapons, could prosecute sonar contacts more aggressively, knowing they could maintain target tracking throughout the attack and quickly re-engage if the initial salvo missed. U-boat commanders, aware that Allied escorts might be equipped with weapons against which no effective tactical response existed, became more cautious, breaking off attacks when escorts approached rather than attempting to close on convoys. The psychological attrition accumulated across hundreds of patrols. Every hydrophone detection of escort propellers, every sonar ping indicating active search, every unidentified surface contact became potential Hedgehog platform. The ocean, vast as it was, offered no hiding place against weapons that could see through darkness and strike with precision. The statistics from the Battle of the Atlantic's decisive period, 1943 through 1944, demonstrated Hedgehog's contribution to Allied victory. In 1942, before widespread deployment, U-boats sank approximately 1,200 Allied merchant ships, totaling over 6 million tons. Allied escorts sank 85 U-boats. The exchange ratio favored Germany despite growing Allied strength. In 1943, as Hedgehog, centimetric radar, and other technological advances deployed widely, merchant ship losses dropped to approximately 350 ships, totaling under 2 million tons, while U-boat losses climbed to 237 boats. The exchange ratio had reversed catastrophically for Germany. Hedgehog alone could not claim credit for this transformation, but weapons analysis conducted by Allied anti-submarine warfare experts estimated that approximately 30 to 40% of U-boat kills during this period involved Hedgehog attacks, either as the primary killing weapon or in combination with depth charges in coordinated attacks. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The human cost of this technological evolution was measured in thousands of young men trapped in steel cylinders when Hedgehog projectiles struck home. The average age of U-boat crew members in 1943 was 22 years. Most had joined the Kriegsmarine with confidence in German technological superiority and belief in ultimate victory. By mid-1943, this confidence had evaporated, replaced by fatalistic acceptance that each patrol would likely be their last. The casualty statistics bore out this fatalism. Of approximately 40,000 men who served in U-boats during the war, 30,000 died, a 75% casualty rate unmatched by any other military service on either side of the conflict. The technical specifications of Hedgehog projectiles revealed engineering elegance that belied their brutal purpose. Each Mark 10 projectile consisted of a streamlined steel casing approximately 24 inches in length and 7 inches in diameter at its widest point. The nose cone housed the impact fuse mechanism, a spring-loaded striker held in safe position by a vane that rotated during the projectile's fall through water. After descending approximately 20 feet, Water pressure forced the vane to rotate sufficiently to arm the striker. Any impact force exceeding the striker spring's resistance would drive the firing pin into the detonator, initiating the 35-pound Torpex charge. Torpex, a portmanteau of torpedo explosive, consisted of 42% RDX, 40% TNT, and 18% powdered aluminum. This composition provided approximately 50% more explosive force than TNT alone. When a Hedgehog projectile struck a submarine's pressure hull, the 35-pound Torpex charge detonated with sufficient force to penetrate steel plating up to 1 inch thick and create a breach approximately 2 feet in diameter. At depths below 100 feet, ocean pressure would force thousands of gallons of seawater through such a breach every second, flooding entire compartments faster than watertight doors could be sealed. A single direct hit was almost always fatal. Multiple hits, as occurred in approximately 30% of successful Hedgehog attacks according to post-war analysis, guaranteed absolute destruction with no possibility of survivor rescue. The ballistic characteristics of the weapon system created the 40-meter circular impact pattern that defined Hedgehog's tactical effectiveness. The 24 spigot mortars were arranged in 4 rows of 6 launchers each, mounted at slightly different angles and elevations. When fired in rapid salvo over approximately 5 seconds, the projectile's staggered launch created a 3-dimensional pattern optimized for attacking submarines at depths between 50 and 150 feet. The mathematical probability models, developed by British operations research analysts, calculated that if a submarine's position was known to within 20 meters accuracy, and if the submarine's speed and heading remained constant during the 11-second flight time, the probability of at least one direct hit exceeded 70% under calm sea conditions, with experienced crews operating the weapon. This probability dropped to approximately 40 to 50% under rough sea conditions or when attacking highly maneuverable targets, but even these reduced figures represented dramatic improvement over depth charge effectiveness. A conventional depth charge pattern consisting of 10 charges dropped from stern racks achieved kill probability below 5% under similar conditions, requiring multiple attack runs to achieve cumulative effect. The time between attacks, typically 3 to 5 minutes for the escort to circle back and regain sonar contact, provided submarines with opportunities for evasive maneuvers and emergency repairs. Hedgehog eliminated this interval, allowing immediate follow-up salvos if the initial pattern missed. Kapitän-Leutnant Horst Rentel, commanding U-641, experienced the relentless nature of Hedgehog attacks on January 19, 1944, while attempting to attack convoy on 222 southwest of Iceland. British escorts detected U-641 at approximately 3,000 yards range using Type 271 radar and immediately altered course to intercept. Rentel, detecting the approaching escorts through hydrophone, dove to 120 meters and rigged for silent running. The escorts, HMS Violet and HMS Poppy, both Flower-class corvettes equipped with Hedgehog, established sonar contact at 800 yards and began their approach. The first Hedgehog salvo, fired by HMS Violet at 300 yards range, missed by approximately 50 meters, falling astern of U-641's actual position. The silence following the splashing impacts gave Rentel brief hope that the attack had been depth charges that failed to detonate. This hope vanished when the second salvo arrived 30 seconds later, fired by HMS Poppy, whose sonar operator had corrected for U-641's evasive course change. 4 projectiles struck U-641 in rapid succession. The first penetrated the pressure hull between frames 20 and 30, flooding the forward torpedo room instantly. The second struck near frame 60, breaching the control room and killing everyone at their stations. The third and fourth hits were redundant, destroying a boat already doomed. U-641 sank in less than 1 minute, from a depth of 120 meters to crush depth at approximately 280 meters, imploding before reaching the ocean floor. All 47 crew members died. The entire engagement, from initial detection to final destruction, lasted less than 4 minutes. HMS Violet's captain, Lieutenant Commander John Stevens, noted in his after-action report that the brevity of the engagement allowed both corvettes to return to convoy protection duties within 20 minutes, having expended only 2 Hedgehog salvos, totaling 48 projectiles to achieve definitive kill. The logistics of Hedgehog deployment revealed Allied material superiority as clearly as any production statistic. Each escort vessel, equipped with Hedgehog, carried approximately 100 to 150 projectiles in ready magazines below deck, sufficient for 4 to 6 full salvos. Replenishment occurred at convoy termination ports, with specialized ammunition ships maintaining stockpiles of thousands of projectiles. The manufacturing capacity required to sustain this deployment was substantial, but well within Allied industrial capability by 1943. British factories, primarily facilities operated by Vickers Armstrong and other major armaments manufacturers, produced Hedgehog projectiles at rates exceeding 10,000 per month by mid-1943. American production, ramping up through late 1943 and into 1944, eventually exceeded British output, with facilities in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Illinois all contributing to supply. The German Kriegsmarine, monitoring this deployment through intelligence reports and captured equipment analysis, understood the implications with complete clarity. Fregattenkapitän Günther Hessler, serving as first staff officer at U-boat headquarters and son-in-law to Admiral Dönitz, maintained detailed statistical analysis of weapon effectiveness throughout 1943 and 1944. His classified reports, captured by Allied forces after Germany's surrender, documented the progressive deterioration of U-boat survivability as Hedgehog deployment expanded. In a report dated September 15, 1943, Hessler wrote with characteristic bluntness about the tactical situation facing U-boat forces. Forward-throwing anti-submarine weapons, particularly the British Hedgehog system, have fundamentally altered the tactical balance in submarine warfare. The weapon's contact detonation principle, combined with maintained sonar contact throughout attack, creates engagement conditions against which conventional evasion tactics provide minimal defense. Statistical analysis of attacks where Hedgehog was identified as the weapon employed shows U-boat survival rates below 30%, compared to 70 to 80% survival rates against conventional depth charge attacks. More significantly, the time required for escorts to achieve kill has decreased from an average of 2 to 3 hours, involving multiple attack runs, to an average of 10 to 15 minutes involving 2 to 3 Hedgehog salvos. This efficiency allows escorts to prosecute multiple contacts during single convoy transit, multiplying their effective strength. Hessler's analysis concluded with a recommendation that U-boat headquarters could not implement. Tactical countermeasures beyond avoiding detection entirely are limited by fundamental physics. The 11-second interval between weapon launch and impact provides insufficient time for significant evasive maneuvers. Emergency diving from periscope depth to 150 meters, theoretically below the weapon's effective envelope, requires approximately 90 seconds for Type 7C boats, 8 times longer than available. Remaining at shallow depth and accepting the incoming pattern offers no advantage, as evasion distance achievable in 11 seconds, approximately 40 to 50 meters, falls within the weapon's 40-meter impact pattern, with probability of direct hit remaining high. The only effective response is avoiding situations where escorts can close to Hedgehog firing range, which requires detecting escorts before they detect the submarine, a condition increasingly difficult to achieve given Allied radar superiority. The radar superiority Hessler referenced compounded the Hedgehog threat. By mid-1943, most Allied escorts mounted Type 271 surface search radar operating at 9.7 cm wavelength, capable of detecting a submarine's conning tower at ranges up to 15,000 yards under favorable conditions. Combined with ASDIC sonar providing underwater detection, escorts possessed overlapping sensor coverage that made approaching convoys undetected nearly impossible. U-boats attempting to attack on the surface at night, traditional tactics from 1940 through 1942, were detected by radar long before reaching torpedo firing range. Boats attacking submerged were detected by ASDIC once they approached within 2,000 yards of the convoy. Either way, detection led to interception led to Hedgehog attack, and Hedgehog attack led with high probability to destruction. The psychological documentation from U-boat survivors captured after Hedgehog attacks revealed the weapon's profound impact on crew morale. Interrogation reports from Fort Hunt, Virginia, where senior U-boat officers were questioned by American naval intelligence, contained repeated references to the hopelessness induced by forward-throwing weapons. Kapitänleutnant Wolfgang Luth, one of Germany's most successful U-boat commanders, with 43 ships totaling over 200,000 tons sunk during his career, was captured in March 1945 after U-181's final patrol. During interrogation sessions in April 1945, Luth provided detailed assessment of how technological developments had destroyed U-boat effectiveness and morale. By 1944, every U-boat commander understood that survival was primarily a matter of luck rather than skill. Luth told his interrogators in sessions documented in declassified reports, "We could execute perfect approach tactics, maintain ideal depth and speed, follow all procedures exactly, and still die if an escort detected us and closed to firing range with forward-throwing weapons." The 11 seconds between hearing the projectiles enter water and either detonation or blessed silence became the only period where our fate was being decided. Everything before was preparation, everything after was consequence. But during those 11 seconds, we were completely passive, waiting to learn whether we would live or die. This helplessness, this absolute lack of agency during the moment of maximum danger, destroyed the warrior ethos that sustained us through earlier years. We were no longer hunters or even hunted warriors. We had become targets, waiting in steel coffins to learn our fate. Luth's reference to steel coffins echoed terminology that had become common among U-boat crews by 1944. The phrase appeared frequently in letters and diaries, in conversation among crews in port, and in the bitter humour that sustained men facing near-certain death. The boats that had been portrayed in German propaganda as sleek predators, the grey wolves that hunted in packs and struck with impunity, had been transformed by Allied technology into submerged tombs, whose occupants awaited execution by weapons they could neither see nor effectively evade. The introduction of Hedgehog to American escort forces in late 1942 and throughout 1943 expanded the weapon's deployment to all Atlantic convoy routes. The United States Navy, initially skeptical of British weapon designs and preferring to develop indigenous systems, recognized Hedgehog's proven effectiveness and adopted it with minimal modification. American destroyer escorts, the mass-produced, convoy escorts that flooded the Atlantic in 1943 and 1944, received Hedgehog as standard equipment. Production contracts went to numerous American manufacturers, with standardized components allowing rapid assembly and installation. The first American Hedgehog kill occurred on April 11, 1943, when USS Bory, a Clemson-class destroyer operating with Escort Group A3, detected and destroyed U-613 northeast of Newfoundland. The engagement followed the pattern that would become standard for American forces: radar detection at long range, sonar contact established during approach, Hedgehog attack at optimal range, with maintained sonar tracking throughout. U-613, commanded by Kapitänleutnant Helmut Köpper on his boat's second patrol, attempted standard evasion procedures, diving deep and altering course. The 11-second flight time proved insufficient for effective evasion. 3 projectiles struck U-613's pressure hull, flooding multiple compartments and destroying the boat's ability to maintain depth control. The boat surfaced involuntarily, severely damaged and unable to dive. USS Bory closed and destroyed the crippled submarine with gunfire. 44 crew members died. 3 survived to be taken prisoner. The captured survivors, interrogated at Fort Hunt, provided American intelligence with detailed accounts of the Hedgehog attack from the victim's perspective. Oberleutnant zur See Friedrich Nollau, U-613's first watch officer and senior surviving officer, described the attack in interrogation sessions conducted in May 1943. His testimony, preserved in declassified files, captured the experiential reality that statistics could not convey. "We detected the destroyer's propellers at approximately 2,000 meters range," Nollau reported. Commander Kerpe ordered dive to 150 meters and silent running. We believed this depth would protect us from conventional depth charges. The sonar pings continued, growing stronger, indicating the destroyer maintained contact despite our depth. Then we heard the splashing, many impacts in rapid sequence directly above our position. The hydrophone operator counted 20, perhaps 24 distinct splashes. There was confusion in the control room. These were not depth charges. The sound was wrong. Commander Kerpe ordered emergency blow to surface, believing we were about to be rammed. Before we could execute, the first detonation occurred. The impact threw everyone not secured to equipment across the compartment. The lights failed immediately. Water sprayed through the pressure hull breach with such force it sounded like continuous explosion. The second detonation occurred before anyone could react to the first. The third followed immediately. The boat was doomed. We knew this. Emergency procedures were attempted, but flooding was too rapid, damage too extensive. When we surfaced, it was not intentional, but because the boat could no longer maintain depth with multiple compartments flooded, we expected to die. That we survived was fortune, nothing more. Nolau's account emphasized the compressed timeline that characterized Hedgehog attacks. From initial projectile impact to catastrophic flooding and loss of depth control consumed less than 30 seconds. Conventional depth charge attacks, even successful ones, typically developed over several minutes as accumulated pressure pulse damage gradually overwhelmed structural integrity. This provided time for emergency procedures, damage control efforts, and final preparations. Hedgehog attacks offered no such interval. The transition from fully operational submarine to sinking wreck occurred faster than human reaction time could accommodate. The mathematical models developed by Allied operations research teams explained this lethality with precision. A 35-pound Torpex charge detonating in direct contact with a pressure hull delivered approximately 50 megajoules of energy directly into the steel structure. The hull plating, typically 18 to 20 millimeters thick on Type 7C boats, could not withstand such focused energy transfer. Breach diameter averaged 24 inches, based on analysis of damaged boats that surfaced after attack or were raised for examination. At depths below 100 feet, ambient water pressure exceeded 50 pounds per square inch, forcing approximately 12,000 gallons of water per minute through a 2-foot circular breach. A submarine compartment averaging 400 to 500 cubic meters volume would flood completely in 2 to 3 minutes through a single breach. Multiple hits, common in successful Hedgehog attacks, proportionally reduced survival time. These calculations assumed watertight doors could be sealed immediately upon hull breach, isolating the damaged compartment. In practice, the violence of the detonation, the sudden pressure changes, and the shock effects on crew members often prevented effective compartmentalization. Obermachinist Werner Zoller, a diesel mechanic who survived U-613's sinking, described the futility of damage control procedures during Hedgehog attack in his interrogation testimony. The standard procedure when pressure hull is breached calls for immediate closure of watertight doors, isolating the damaged compartment, Zoller explained to his interrogators. We practiced this procedure countless times during training and at the beginning of each patrol. When the Hedgehog projectiles struck, everything we had learned became impossible to execute. The first detonation occurred in the forward torpedo room, killing everyone in that compartment instantly and breaching the pressure hull. The watertight door between torpedo room and forward battery compartment should have been closed immediately, isolating the damage. But the explosion's shockwave traveled through the entire boat, throwing men against equipment, rupturing hydraulic lines, shorting electrical systems. By the time anyone could react, flooding had propagated beyond the initial breach. The second and third detonations struck other areas, creating multiple breach points faster than doors could be secured. We were trained to fight the boat, to control damage, to survive through discipline and procedure. Against these weapons, there was no time to fight, only time to die, or, in rare cases like ours, time to survive, because the boat surfaced before sinking completely. The production statistics for Hedgehog projectiles reached staggering totals by 1944. Combined British, Canadian, and American manufacturing produced approximately 60,000 projectiles monthly at peak production, sufficient to equip hundreds of escorts and maintain operational stockpiles that ensured no escort ever faced ammunition shortage. This contrasted dramatically with German production constraints across all weapon systems. By 1944, Allied strategic bombing had severely degraded German industrial capacity, forcing prioritization decisions that inevitably left some requirements unfulfilled. U-boat production, once assigned highest priority, competed with tank production, aircraft production, and V-weapon programs for limited resources. The result was predictable. U-boat commissioning rates that had reached 20 to 25 boats monthly in 1943 dropped to 15 to 18 monthly by late 1944, despite desperate attempts to maintain output. Even boats that reached operational status faced critical shortages. Torpedoes, the U-boat's primary weapon, were rationed. Training time was reduced to rush crews into combat. Equipment quality declined as experienced factory workers were conscripted for military service and replaced with forced laborers who had neither skill nor motivation to maintain production standards. The technological gap that had begun widening in 1942 had become an unbridgeable chasm by 1944. German submarines operating with inferior detection equipment, inadequate defensive systems, and increasingly inexperienced crews faced Allied escorts equipped with radar, sonar, Hedgehog, and backed by industrial capacity that could replace losses faster than they could be inflicted. The final statistics from the Battle of the Atlantic documented this complete reversal. In 1942, U-boats sank approximately 1,200 Allied merchant ships while losing 85 submarines, an exchange ratio of approximately 14 ships sunk per U-boat lost. By 1944, U-boats sank approximately 200 merchant ships while losing 242 submarines, an exchange ratio of less than 1 ship per U-boat lost. The trend was unsustainable and irreversible. Every month that passed saw more experienced commanders die, more capable boats destroyed, more trained crews lost. The replacement boats arrived with green crews, inferior equipment, and declining morale. They lasted, on average, less than one patrol. Hedgehog's contribution to this catastrophic exchange ratio can be quantified through analysis of engagement records. Of approximately 240 U-boats destroyed in 1944, Allied records attribute between 80 and 90 kills to Hedgehog attacks, either as sole weapon or in combination with depth charges. This represented approximately 40% of total U-boat losses for the year, making Hedgehog the single most effective anti-submarine weapon deployed by Allied forces when measured by kill ratio per attack. The weapon achieved this effectiveness despite being mounted on only a fraction of total Allied escort vessels, suggesting that universal deployment might have driven U-boat losses even higher. The German response to Hedgehog, like responses to other Allied technological advantages, came too late and achieved too little. Research. Programs explored various countermeasures throughout 1943 and 1944. Experimental boats tested rubber coating designed to absorb or deflect projectiles before impact fuse could detonate. Laboratory tests showed promise, but operational trials revealed that the coating degraded rapidly under combat conditions, added significant weight that reduced performance, and provided no protection against direct hits from projectiles with sufficient kinetic energy to penetrate the rubber layer before detonation. The program was abandoned after several boats were lost, despite carrying the coating, proving its ineffectiveness. Acoustic decoys designed to confuse Allied sonar operators received more development attention. The theory held that artificial targets deployed from a submarine could draw Hedgehog attacks away from the boat itself. The Boltzauber device, a chemical canister that created hydrogen bubbles simulating a submarine's sonar return, showed some tactical utility, but could not reliably defeat experienced operators using multiple sensor modalities, including radar and multiple sonar frequencies. The device also required surfacing or snorkel depth to deploy, exactly the conditions where submarines were most vulnerable to detection and attack. The most promising German countermeasure never reached operational deployment. The Type 21 electroboot, with its radical design incorporating massive battery capacity and streamlined hull form, could theoretically achieve 17-knot submerged speed, more than double the speed of conventional U-boats. At this speed, the boat could traverse 160 meters in 11 seconds, enough to potentially evade a Hedgehog impact pattern if attack warning came early enough. However, the first Type 21 boats reached operational status only in April 1945, weeks before Germany's surrender. Of 118 boats constructed, only 2 conducted combat patrols, neither encountering Hedgehog attacks. The revolutionary design that might have restored tactical parity arrived when the war was already lost. The final accounting of Hedgehog's impact transcends kill statistics and exchange ratios. The weapon transformed submarine warfare by eliminating the tactical advantages submarines had traditionally exploited. The ocean's vastness no longer provided concealment when radar and sonar could detect submarines at ranges measured in miles. Darkness no longer provided cover when escorts maintained contact through electronic sensors. Depth no longer provided protection when weapons detonated on contact at any depth. The submarine, which had begun the war as predator, ended it as prey, hunted by weapons against which conventional evasion tactics provided minimal defense, and courage provided no advantage whatsoever. The 11 seconds between Hedgehog launch and impact became, for thousands of German submariners, the final seconds of their lives. They spent those seconds in darkness, in steel compartments smelling of diesel fuel and unwashed bodies, knowing that projectiles were falling toward them and knowing they could do nothing to affect the outcome. Some prayed, some simply waited, some checked equipment uselessly, performing familiar tasks because action felt better than passive acceptance. When the projectiles struck, death came too quickly for conscious recognition. When they missed, the relief was temporary because the escorts would fire again and keep firing until ammunition was exhausted or the submarine was destroyed. This was not the war German submariners had trained for or expected to fight. They had enlisted believing in technological superiority, tactical excellence, and ultimate victory. They discovered instead that modern war was decided by industrial capacity and technological innovation, deployed at scales that individual courage could not overcome. The Hedgehog projectile, 65 pounds of steel and explosive, falling through 11 seconds of silence, represented this reality more clearly than any propaganda or strategic analysis ever could. It was the physical manifestation of Allied material superiority, transforming confidence into fear and predators into prey through the simple arithmetic of probability and the unforgiving physics of contact detonation. The survivors, the 25% who lived through the war, carried memories of those 11-second intervals for the rest of their lives. In interviews conducted decades after the war, in memoirs published when the pain had faded enough to allow remembrance, in quiet conversations among men who shared experiences no one else could fully understand, they returned again and again to those moments of helpless waiting. The weapon that killed so many of their comrades had also killed their belief in German invincibility, their confidence in technological superiority, their faith in ultimate victory. They learned, in steel cylinders beneath the Atlantic, that courage without technological parity was merely prologue to defeat, and that modern war offered no mercy to those fighting with yesterday's weapons against enemies equipped with tomorrow's capabilities. The Hedgehog projectile, simple in design and devastating in effect, stands as one of World War II's most significant technological achievements precisely because it achieved victory not through revolutionary complexity, but through practical effectiveness deployed at industrial scale. It solved the fundamental problem of anti-submarine warfare, the loss of target contact during final attack approach, through straightforward engineering, and proved itself in combat through thousands of attacks, across millions of square miles of ocean. It killed efficiently, decisively, and without mercy. In doing so, it helped win the Battle of the Atlantic and demonstrated that in modern war, the ability to deploy effective technology in overwhelming quantities ultimately determines victory regardless of enemy skill, courage, or determination. The 11 seconds defined a generation of men who went to sea in submarines and never returned. They remain, still, in those steel coffins scattered across the Atlantic floor, silent testament to the cold arithmetic of technological warfare and the human cost of fighting battles that mathematics had already decided. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.